For those of us researching the history of the video game and home computer business, we have lots of sources to go back on. We've got some interviews from the era. We've got some of the magazines that were primarily designed for, game players like we were at the time. But it's very seldom that we get an insight into what people inside the industry were looking at, especially in those early years. And there's one resource that every historian, both professional and amateur, such as myself, has relied on over the years, and that is the Video Game Update, also Computer Entertainer. And I'll be honest, for a long time, I didn't know what the origin exactly of that series was, but due to the work of Frank Cifaldi over at the Video Game History Foundation, well, we know who that was, who one of the two principals of that publication was, and I am very, very pleased to welcome her to the show today. And I really should have asked how to properly pronounce the last name beforehand, but I'm going to guess Marylou Badeaux or Badeaux.
Badeaux.
Badeaux. Excellent. Marylou Badeaux. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
Excellent. Now, as we do always, I like to start as chronologically as possible. So I'd like to ask you, where are you from originally and what's your educational background?
I was born and grew up in Boston. And education, I graduated from high school, did a little bit of college, but because I was always considered myself a more creative type, college didn't suit me because I was going to be a big famous dancer, and who needs college for that? My initial thought as far as career was to be a professional dancer. And
Okay.
yeah, and when the family moved out to actually San Diego, California, when I was about 12 or 13, because of health issues for my mother, she needed to be in a warm climate. So the way I looked at that was it got me closer because as soon as I graduated from high school, I had won a couple of awards, with the dancing. So I moved to LA to continue training and hopefully break in.
Awesome. And so you're in the prime area then of the heart of the entertainment business. You're
Yes.
trying to get into dancing, and how does that go? How well did that work out for you?
It didn't. The thing is, first of all, no matter how good you are in smaller environments, now you're up against the big guys. And timing was such that I was too late for the Hollywood musicals and too early for videos. So there
That's right.
wasn't, yeah, there wasn't a real big arena to have a chance. And I would get some minimal things, but certainly not enough to make a living. And the Hollywood couch or the Hollywood couch exists.
Ooh.
As far as, if you want to get to a certain point, you have to give up certain things. And I wasn't willing to do that because it wasn't my upbringing. And at the final thing, they were doing an Elvis Presley special, television special. And I made it through all the auditions, and we got to the last one where the people left. Those that were going to be doing the show. And at this point, they had all the big wigs there because earlier than that, it was just choreographer, da da da. And before we danced a step, this guy who to this day I have no idea who he was, he walks down the line. I mean, they're going to end up with 15, and there's probably 30 of us. And he going, you, thank you very much, but you can go home. And I was one of those. And I'm like, and what I found out later was I wasn't tall enough for what they wanted. And that sort of destroyed me, thinking, why didn't they tell me that on the first audition? So that's when I thought, there's got to be another way. And I started going to night school at LACC and taking some speech courses and music courses and stuff, and did the jobs you do when you're just first starting an insurance company, this and that and the other. And then how I got into the industry was, in other words, sometimes luck is everything. And I was sitting in the lobby filling out a felt form at KHJ, which at the time was the number one radio station in the country. I mean, it was just the station, the disc jockeys, blah, blah, blah. And I'm in the lobby and I hear this screaming in an office off the lobby. And this guy comes out. And if you remember Bozo the Clown,
Oh yeah.
that's, yeah, with the wild red hair and all. I swear to God, that's who this guy was. And I have no idea who he is. Turns out later he was the program director and the number one PD in the country. And he comes out, arms flailing, and looks at me and he says, are you available? And I'm like, yeah. And he said, okay, get in here. He had just fired his secretary. And that was the start.
Okay, so sorry, it's the kind of story that could only happen really in
In
Hollywood,
Hollywood. Yeah,
basically.
yeah.
So, and you said you had worked at like insurance companies and stuff before this, so there was some background in clerical work.
Yeah, and I mean, in high school, because I didn't like regular educational studies, I took typing one year just because I thought, well, it's a way to get out of the other stuff. So I knew how to type.
Uh, a very valuable skill. I teach at a university. I keep telling all the kids, if you leave here without knowing how to type, don't leave here. But yeah,
Well, especially now because I mean, with computers and all the rest of it, I
yeah.
mean, it was probably the best course I ever took in my life, and all I thought was I was dodging something in arithmetic or algebra or something like that. It was a duck and dodge, not and so just it's funny how things go, you
Oh,
know?
definitely.
Yeah,
Oh, okay. So you're now at the number one radio station in the country.
yep,
You're the secretary to the program director.
correct.
Uh, what? Okay, just for someone who's never worked in radio or anything like this, uh, I mean, this is also the prime era of payola, right?
I was blind to it all. I was so
Okay,
naive. Yeah, I was
okay,
very young. I was what, 19?
gotcha.
Something like that. And growing up in Boston, there was a potload of stuff that passed me by in many places that I look back and say, oh, gee, I'm sure it was going on. And ironically, when I was only there for about a year and a half, and the reason was I met my future husband there, who was the top radio producer in well, probably the country. And he produced two of the main shows because at that time the disc jockey was on one side of the glass and the producer on the other side, and the producer was playing the music and doing the cartridges, and he was doing all the logos for the station and stuff. And they had a no fraternize rule. So when we started, dating, and it was starting to get to the point where it was going to go somewhere, I left. So
Gotcha.
yeah,
Okay. And sorry, my images of radio in my head are old episodes of WKRP. So the idea of the producer being on the other side of the glass and stuff wasn't really part of that makeup, but it's interesting that you say so. There's a producer who's actually doing the mechanical side
yes,
of the music switching
yes.
and so forth.
And he's making it sound fabulous because this is back when disc jockeys could talk. They were allowed freedom. There's all sorts of things going on, and it was a very complex kind of thing. And when a disc jockey found a producer who they worked well with, that was gold. It's sort of like a director of a movie. Without the director, everybody's sort of out there flailing. It's the director who keeps it going, in a certain direction. So you could almost say John was like directing, sort of thing. So, I mean, he actually got nominated for a Grammy for something he produced. So, yeah, he was well respected in the business. But so I went on to like a talk radio place, and I hated that because it was talk radio, and I sort of knocked around like local television, just trying to find where my place was. And then at one point, Warner Brothers Studio had a sort of what you call a cattle call, because at that time they had what they called steno pools. And there would be, yeah, and you'd sit in this huge room, 80 people, 90 people with typewriters, spewing out script changes and what have you. And because it was a large intake, I got hired. And I hated it in there because it was just like, oh my God. By the end of the first day, I thought, I can't do this. And suddenly, someone from the television department, their assistant, was going to be out for a week. So they sent me up there. I worked for him for 7 years.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
he did pilot development. So I ended up, even though I was always a secretary, because it was a major glass ceiling at Warner Pictures at that time, or Warner Television, all of that. I did all the pre-reading of all the scripts came in and would recommend what ones he should look at it, what have you. So I was performing at a different level, but still secretary, whatever, whatever. And I got tired of that because I could see there was no opportunity. So I went to Warner Pictures and worked in post-production. I worked on All the President's Men and The Exorcist.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And
Sorry.
yeah, it sounds exciting, but oh my God, it's like watching grass grow. It's because you're just working so far into the future, and everything is it isn't what it appears to be. And I realized I missed the music because I mean I loved music because what my dad would take me to jazz clubs in Boston, this and that. So I was really and I had a friend who was head of personnel at Warner Brother Records, and Warner Records also was known as hiring, promoting from within, giving women a chance, et cetera. Because keep in mind, this is in the 70s and women didn't progress. And I said to her, I said, if something comes up, I don't care what it is, and I'll take a pay cut, doesn't matter, as long as it's a young department that has growth potential. And after two or three interviews here and there that didn't work out, the head of black music, they just started that division, and he was looking for an assistant. And I went over. We hit it. We talked for like 3 hours. And the one thing because I had finally gotten bold enough, I said, "Look, I have no problem coming in as an assistant. I can do it as long as whatever. But as the department grows, if I show you I can do the job, I want to be considered for promotion." And he said, "Well, that's going to take at least 2 or 3 years." I said, "That's fine. I'm cool with that." I took a large pay cut, which I made up for in time. But just a year later, we had already started growing to such a point that within a year I was no longer his assistant. I was promotion coordinator, and it sort of went up and up and up to where the last few years there I was vice president. So the opportunities were there, and I got to be back with music. And I happened to be with the type of music I loved, because I didn't know music had labels, but I had grown up on Motown. I had grown up on that, and my dad took me to see like Duke Ellington, Billie Holiday,
Oh,
Sarah Vaughan, at a place called Storyville in Boston. So this is what I loved, but I didn't have a label for it. And suddenly I'm plunk in the middle of the department. I mean, when I met Sarah Vaughan years later, I'm like, oh my God, it's like, this is amazing. So that's how that all came to pass.
now I do have a couple of questions going back, and this is primarily about the structure of the company, because Warner at this point in the 70s is very diversified, like you said, television, movies, music.
Yeah.
Uh, how and you are moving between these different sectors. uh, the catchphrase from the 90s, synergies. I mean, how much interaction is there between the departments? I mean, because you do have a lot of, I mean, you need background music for the television shows. You
Yeah.
need actors for both television and movies and so forth. Is there a lot of intermingling of the resources and
No,
of the people?
no,
No.
no. And I no, they're like different complete companies under Time Warner umbrella out of New York. And the perfect example is one of the things that ended up helping me was, especially when I was working a lot with Prince, and he was then involved with Batman and what have you. And the picture company, most of the other divisions looked down on the the record company. It's not a department, it's a company, because to them we're a bunch of, hippies running around with cocaine and payola and all that sort of thing. So where they're all, in suits, and so that there was
Mm.
this disdain. Um, and when Batman happened, I actually, because I still had friends on the other side, and I said, look, I rang a friend of mine. I said, who do I, because there was no cross directory. There was no, so you're going through maybe hundreds of people trying to find your counterpart or the person you should be talking to. And so I got to be really friendly with a couple of people in various departments at the picture company. So whenever we had something where we had a soundtrack, or like Purple Rain, where obviously it was a very synergistic situation, I would be very involved because I knew how to deal with the people at the picture company. They had to have a certain respect, or they didn't want to deal with you. And they also didn't like these, music people, these crazy music people telling them what to do because they're spending millions on a campaign. So it became it's sort of a soft shoe kind of thing. And I mean, the perfect example was Quincy Jones had a project called Listen Up. And he was big on the word synergy. And he had meetings with us, and it was like, you will find the people at the picture company. I expect this, I expect that, da 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 da. Try as we may, I mean, the project, for various and sundry reasons, didn't go the way it should have, or would have one have hoped. It was not real commercial. But Quincy, he had obviously written soundtracks for motion pictures, but he didn't have the respect level at the picture company, if you know what I'm saying. It's
Yeah.
like, oh, yes, we respect him as a composer, we respect him on the music side, but we're not going to take his project and go all in and do whatever. I don't remember the details of the whole thing. So it's tricky, very, very tricky. And inevitably, and this isn't unusual in any industry, but I think especially in the entertainment industry, people are so uh what's the word, they're so concerned about their own gig and losing it because everybody's trying to climb the ladder. And they'll some of the things that are done and said and what have you are just awful, and there's just lots of people who don't have the kind of integrity, shall we say, that they should have, that they're going to get to the top no matter what, they don't care. So it can be very, very tricky to maneuver through that and keep, I mean, because with me, it was a question, well, yeah, I'm a woman. I was the only white in any black division anywhere in the business. And it took quite a while, and I understood that, and I was okay with that, to gain the respect of people in general, to realize that I was there for the good of the music and not to see how far I could. Well, of course, I wanted to up my own career, but that was somewhat secondary, if you know what I mean. So
Mm.
it's a tough business. It's. And I mean, I was very fortunate that I spent, I think, almost 30 years with Warner Brothers at one division or another, and you wouldn't find that now because it just isn't the way it works. And it was a very good company to work for. Just the way they treated their people and the benefits and what have you. So, but that's sort of getting off into that side of the universe. So,
Yeah. Well, so what year approximately are you entering the Black Music division at Warner Brothers?
1976, August
1976.
76, August of
Okay.
76. Yep, yep.
So you're entering there, and the company is built into all of these little side divisions. And
Which company are we specifically talking Warner?
well, Time Warner as a corp,
Yeah,
no, it's not Time Warner at this point. It's
well, no, it wasn't at that point. It was just Warner Brothers.
just Warner Brothers. Yeah.
Time came along later, and I mean, there were a few different uh, things. Um, okay, so each company and the corporation
Mhm.
had a lot of divisions. You had television, film, obviously, record company. Um, you had publishing. There were just there was a magazine division. I mean, there were probably 20 or 30 divisions, which were companies in of themselves. I mean, like Warner Records home office in Burbank, there were 400 people there. So,
Wow.
yeah, so each company very much, and then within each company, like at Warner Records, because of the different music genres, there was black music, there was pop, there was AOR, which is adult orientated, country, jazz, disco. I'm sure I'm missing some. So each of those divisions had full staffs. Then on top of that, you had a marketing department, which was an overall department, advertising, art department where they did the covers, international. I mean, it was 4 floors of lots. Now, the black division was different from the others because we were almost a record label within a record label. And that was something that I was involved with my boss, because I said, because we weren't getting the traction that we needed from the overall advertising department or overall publicity department because they had such a wide roster. So we started sort of building a mini department of our own so we could, if we had a project we were really behind, we didn't have to go begging to another department like, well, sales, for instance. We had our own sales head. We didn't have to go to sales. Yes, he did for certain things, but we were able to act like a small label, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and this is another question, or sort of for clarification, just for people who don't understand how the record business worked, especially back then with the physical product. So even though you have these different labels that, and correct me if I'm wrong, so you guys are financing the creation through payments for studios or advances to the artist. You're
Mhm.
then getting the master recordings. You've got control of the rights to the music. Now you need to publish it and get it out, but you don't necessarily have your own distribution and manufacturing. That's shared amongst the labels as
Yeah.
part of Warner.
Yes, it was a division called WEA, which was Warner Electra Atlantic Distribution. And what they had, they were awesome. They were awesome. They had everything from what they call merch reps, merchandising, and they were young kids just starting in the business. They'd run around to all the local record shops. That's back when there were a lot of record shops, and they'd put posters up and displays and do contests, and so you had stuff going on at a grassroots level all the way up to dealing with the big chains, be the Tower Records or whatever was around at that time, and they could spin on a dime, and all the manufacturing, distribution. They had warehouses, Chicago, Atlanta, Philadelphia, Los Angeles, and so they were pressing in all of these places, and so
Oh,
they could have records to these store, like, let's say you get an ad at a radio station in Chicago, and it's an artist that, like, isn't well known, so it's not something that the record stores will even know about, and then WEA goes into action and lets them know, oh, well, this artist, this song is on this major station, and they're getting 5 spins a day, and they're getting phone calls and all that. So they will bring in some comp product, just complimentary product, just so they have something to put in there, and they'll put. So it just turns into this machine that, I mean, we pretty much own the industry because also we happen to have very, very good artists. Um,
Hmm.
Being an artist-orientated company, they signed artists and then let artists do their thing, which,
And and so you you've got this distribution and manufacturing arm. What kind of relationship do the individual labels have with them? I mean, is there in and I'm just being over dramatic, but I can imagine that, there might be some kind of conflict of who gets the presses on which day of the week or something in order to
you
uh,
know, that
control that.
virtually never was an issue.
Oh, really?
Because we had massive capability.
Ah,
And there was, of course, we were competitive, the labels, but we were all under the same umbrella. So we wanted one another to do well. The heads of the company all were very much in tune with the other ones. I mean, they did retreats, they did, that because they were real record men. I mean, you got the Mo Austin at Warner Brothers, Armit Ertegun at Atlantic. I forget who was an Elektra at the time, but I mean, these were record people. And yeah, of course, the money matters, but if the record's good, the money will come. And so it was what would happen, because once a year there would be WEA would have a convention, and one year be in Florida, Chicago, whatever, and all the main WEA people went, all the merch people, the sales people, everybody, and then representatives from the labels, and each label would have a day or half a day, and in that, and at nighttime at the dinner, that label would present one of their acts. And I mean, we got to see Simply Red, Rod Stewart. I mean, Johnny Cash. I mean, it's
oh
just
my
like,
goodness.
I mean, I'll have my rubber chicken. Thank you. It's okay. Um, and then during the day, there would be breakout meetings, but each label will have put together a video presentation. And this meeting was always in September, because what it was doing was, here's the product you're going to have for Christmas, and we're going to have special sales programs and special this and special. It was a way to get the WEA people excited, and the video presentations were brilliant. I mean, they were funny, they were there, but it would all have bits and pieces of the new music. And so what would happen is the people from each label would come in and watch the presentation from the other labels and cheer them on and what have you. So it's very much a family kind of feeling, and that's what was promoted through the companies. I mean, we were all there. I would say pretty much close to 100% of us were there because of the music, not because of some other reason. Well, I'm going to make lots of money or whatever. Because there are definitely ways to make better money than, because the hours and everything you put in. But you do it for your love of music, really.
Gotcha. Now, so the big sections of the company when you're joining in the mid 70s, we've got movies, television, music. There's also a publishing division. I mean, I think at this time they already own DC and Mad Magazine, things like that.
Yes, yes, yes.
But each one of those has, at that point in time, has very, very different distribution channels.
Yes.
There's not a lot of crossover.
No.
And now we're going to get into the other questions. So 76, when you're joining the music department, is also the same year that Warner buys Atari. Uh,
Mhm.
was that, I mean, you already said that there wasn't a lot of crossover between the divisions, but uh, what was the perception of that acquisition at that time in the company? Was it just another division, or was it seen as something else?
Um, it was seen as just another acquisition, and it didn't have anything to do with us. And therefore, okay, fine, it's just another thing out there. I mean, it was later, as um, my my husband, the one from KHJ, who then husband, when we decided to do this mail order company, Yeah. And that was partially because, I mean, I'd been just being exposed in the entertainment business, and the fact that John was super clued in as far as electronics. We had a bloody PC in the house. I didn't even know how to turn it on. I mean, just because that was when it was just zeros and whatever it is. Yep. And he had to buy a VCR for the first walk on the moon. I mean, and that cost us, I think it was $2,000, and I just about went out of my mind. And then he had to have a Pong machine. Um, and of course, that's the boop, 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 boop,
Yeah,
boop, boop.
yeah, yeah.
Now, I remember that was $99, which was a lot of money in those days. And so there was this organic sort of thing because of what was happening in the household. Um, and of course, you end up with an Atari because the 2600 was, that's all there was. And, playing Pac-Man and Mario Brothers and, all the obvious ones. So I probably had more awareness of it than other people because it's just like, because the corporation had something like 50 or 60,000 people working for it worldwide. You can't possibly keep up with what other divisions are doing unless you happen to have a friend who works in them and you get together for lunch and you have a chit chat. But like I said earlier, it's not like you get a phone directory that gives you, your counterparts. It was, you had a phone directory for the building, Warner Brother Records, I mean, so there just wasn't much cross, which I think, probably looking back, is probably somewhat of a shame, because I think that, yes, a lot's got done, but I think a lot didn't get done because the barriers. I found when I did a movie project, um, I had better success when it was a company other than Warner Brothers. Like, I did a project with 20th Century Fox, and they were, oh, God, you're involved. You want to get involved? That's great. Maybe they didn't feel threat. I don't know,
Hmm.
but it was just different. I mean, I do remember that when Atari got in trouble, I remember a few people saying, oh, they probably never should have bought it in the first place. Um, Probably not, but because, I mean, again, easy in retrospect.
Hmm.
Because did know, and I don't even remember how I know this, but I knew that they were producing an awful lot of product.
Oh, yeah.
That the sort of like, it's sort of like a company that expands too quickly. Your first one or two stores are doing really, really well. So instead of expanding to three or four or five or six, let's expand to 50.
Hmm.
And, without doing the research of whether is the customer there to support this, do we have the infrastructure to support it? And you just keep tossing out those tacos or whatever it is, and suddenly it's just like you got way more tacos than you got customers. Because you got 50 million tacos and you got 10,000 customers, so somewhere there's going to be a problem.
Definitely. So, you mentioned, of course, the mail order company. What year do you start that?
I want to say it was around 1980.
Okay.
Yeah, it was started because, first of all, we're heading into a recession at that point. I was uh, I was very concerned about the security of my job, and that was just me being me. Fortunately, one of the things John did was I got the first Apple IIe, and he taught me how to use that, because that I could understand, and I started taking it into work. And
Oh, wow.
I had him write a program, because every week we had to do what they called tracking. In other words, the local people would call in um, from their uh, cities on a Friday
Hmm.
morning and tell me, okay, this station added this station added that. It went from 23 to 22. And I would have to handwrite the sheets for every single artist we were tracking. So it might be 20 artists or 20 common, it would be albums and singles. And so you'd be on the phone with each person at least an hour. But then to make it worse, for the following week, you had to get blank tracking sheets out and put last week's number in so that you get ready to put this week's number in. So the amount of time, and it was just ridiculous. And I thought there's got to be a better way. And so John wrote me this like really simple program. And so our department ended up doing tracking by computer, which had no one else did. And of course, I didn't share it with anybody. And then I also started tracking sales. So I would put in these magic numbers. All I was doing was saving myself a ton of time,
Hmm.
and then spit out these dot matrix, reports, give them to my boss. And then, of course, he'd give them to his boss, who was way up in the tree. And they're like, wow. So that saved me. And I still believe that saved me in that layoff because no one else even knew how to turn the computer on. Because
Oh, wow.
the only place in the building they had computers at that point was in IT, full stop. So the mail order, because I could see from the fact, because I always like to look at catalogs myself. We had a friend who had a video shop in town, and he was doing tremendous business. And so it's just one of those things we cooked up one night over dinner or whatever. Oh, let's just try this, and there won't be any outlay and blah blah blah. And so we did that. I'm going to say for a couple of years, and we were integrated. First, it started just with blank videotape, cables, and starting with some movies and stuff because stuff was starting to come out on VHS and beta. And then Atari was out there, and we thought, well, we should have that too. It was easy enough to get product. And the beginning of, well, it was first called Video Game Update because computer games didn't exist, obviously, was a lot of our customers were military overseas. And the reason for that was that the local stores were taking care of the local people. And people, mail order is not like the instant online you have now. They got to send in an order, process it, and you send it back to them. So it's a much more complex type of thing because that was the forerunner to online. And we just found that the people that were serving overseas, because they didn't have ways to get, and it was blank tape, it was, all that sort of thing. And they started because they're lonely, they're reaching out. So a lot of times you get a letter in with the order, and they were asking about what else was coming for video games because I'm sure in their off time, this is what they were doing.
Hmm.
And they were looking for the next best whatever so that they could, because they're all talking to one another about it, what have you. So that was the infancy of Video Game Update because my background being marketing, at that point, I don't know if my sister had come on board yet or not, but John wasn't that involved with it other than doing the computer stuff. And I just said, I'm going to do like a one sheet. And because you get press releases from companies and stuff and to tell, because they want you to order the stuff in. So
Hmm.
they're giving you a sheet of this is what's coming in the next 3 months. So the first couple, 2 to 3 issues, which they weren't issues, they were just marketing, they were just like real down and dirty type of things. It blew up. People like, we want more information, this and that. And that is how the newsletter was born. And initially it was probably 6 to 8 pages, but then it just kept growing because of the number of machines. And then as it started going more into computer, and I knew that video games in a large part were going to go away. that because as computers were becoming more of a household item, why would you get a separate machine? Certainly there's a place for them, but not all the stuff that was out there. And the really complex stuff is going to have to go to computers because of the memory and da 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 da. So we were sort of pushed in that direction. But the advantage, like I told Frank, was that because we were coming from a place of a retailer and we were listening to our customers, we weren't like, I'll compare it to the record business because you sit there in the record company and you say, oh, we know our customer wants this. Well, you don't know that, because you're sitting in your little ivory tower and, da da da. And I always made sure that in whatever capacity I spent a fair bit of time out on the road. And I had some of my main clients were in Washington, D.C. and New York. So I was in those two markets a lot. Well, there were lots of record stores. And, or you go to clubs and you talk to people, you're just chatting with them. And that's where you find out everything. You talk to your consumer. You see that all the time where people just are not plugged into what the consumer wants, and then they fail and you're like, oh, how did that happen? You weren't giving them what you weren't listening to them. And it wasn't all that long into the piece that I could see Atari was heading for a big fall. It was quantity, not quality. And again, you could go back and compare it to record albums. People will buy anything for a minute, and then when they get a few that have only two really good songs on it and the rest is filler, and they've just spent a fair bit of money on it, they're going to be more careful because they don't have that kind of free cash laying around that they can, and we're talking a different era where obviously we're not, this is before streaming, before Spotify, before, so it's a different universe, but it's the same principle. That was the problem with CDs. They were just rushing them out. And, a lot of it was just mediocre. And people are like, when I put a CD on, I want to hear like the Beatles, it's one great tune after another. You don't want to have to go through 10 tunes to get one or two really good ones. So it's, I think it's that way in anything, isn't it?
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. So.
So now you're, and then I think there's a couple of parallel things going on here that I'd like to put into perspective, because your day job is still at Warner Music. You're
Yes.
still producing going into the 1980s, or marketing, I should say. What's your official position around 1980 or so when you also start the mail order?
I went from promotion coordinator to director of research. That's because of the computer thing. And, that's amazing how they're trying to like give you a title, but they don't know quite. Because I never fit an absolute description. And what they finally did, because I went through a couple of other machinations, they finally made me VP special projects. And I loved that because boy, oh boy, that just like, I could do anything I wanted. I mean, yeah.
It does sound like freedom right there.
Yeah, because at that point, then I was producing TV specials on our artists. I was doing what was the very first corporate sponsorship deals. I actually did a deal with Apple where we were the forerunner to iTunes. This is back in early 90s. And I happened to know someone at Apple. And at that point, I had moved over to the jazz department. And we came up with this idea of like, what if they were introducing a new laptop. And I said, what if I clear about 10 songs, jazz songs, and you put it on the desktop. And so they click on it and they hear all this music for free. Because again, this is before downloading, before all that sort of thing. And if they like it, there's a place there where they can click and buy the album at discount. And so I mean, I did something similar with American Express. So I was working with, I mean, I did something with Air Force One, where we ended up with a channel on Air Force One. Every one of
Really?
other people, yeah, which was really fun because I still have the, you know how they have the onboard magazine with the featured and stuff, and this is aboard Air Force One with the, you know, whatever, and it's Warner Brothers is the entire playlist.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah, so I mean, I was just what I was doing at that point. I had stopped going to record conventions, and I asked my boss, I would like to seek out marketing conventions that have nothing to do with you know, the record business, because I was the only record person that went to these things. And I made some phenomenal contacts because they're like, ooh, Warner Brother Records, we could do something with them. And so you're, you know, passing around business cards and what have you. And, you know, we did all sorts of crazy things. Now I think it's more common, but I mean, I even had one artist that I drove him to the Home Shopping Network, and somewhere in rural Pennsylvania. And I remember him turning to me, he says, "Only you would get me into this." And we sold his album while he played on air.
Oh
You
my
know, it's like,
goodness, that's awesome.
yeah. So I mean, so I guess I carried that to the other side of things with especially with the newsletter, but with the mail order company. Um, and it was somewhere in there that my sister moved back to Los Angeles. She had been living in the South somewhere. And I asked her, you know, until she decided what she was going to do, 'cause she was staying at the house, could she, you know, run the business for us? Because at this point, John was like not involved at all. And then again, I was working. You know, I'd come home and be doing the accounting and all the rest of it. It's just like, you know, you hit burnout. Um, so, and then you know, I asked her, would she get involved with the newsletter? Because I said, I can't do it alone. Because this product at this point is coming in right, left, and center to review. And it's just like, you know, you could blow your brains out. But the consumer was loving it. And because they were loving it, we didn't take advertising and all the rest. The um, gaming companies came to really respect us because A, we never asked for anything from them other than product to review. And, you know, we weren't looking for their advertising, da da da. And they also realized that we were, they might not always like our reviews, but we were very, very honest to our ability, because it is very much a personal thing as far as how you look at any given thing in life. But there's certain criteria that you'll just look for, and certainly in some, the graphics were just not of the level that they needed to be at that point in time. And so, you know, and if we reviewed something high, we'd suddenly get a bunch of pre-orders in. And you know, again, had a great, it was a great gauge on both sides, helping you on the newsletter side and on the mail order side, because again, listening to the consumer, what are they telling us, and how do we adjust? And not being a glossy magazine, being a newsletter, we could change on a dime. You know, if something wasn't working, it was very easy to say, okay, this is not a good idea. We get rid of that, da da da. And then other consumers are the reason that we did that availability update, which turned into a bloody nightmare, but they loved it. And for those who don't know what it is, it was the bane of my existence. But we by every console brand that was out there, we would list the coming months by month the titles that were coming, and in parentheses, what company they were coming from, because certain companies like an Activision had a higher reputation. People were more willing to take a risk on that as opposed to some other label that, maybe has only gotten one or two games and they're just sort of okay, but not great. And so that came from consumers saying, can't you tell us when, what, how, and whatever? And I'm thinking, oh, that can't be that difficult. And it was, yeah, it was very time consuming. But again, because we got the position of having great relationships with the companies, and Celeste was talking to them on a regular basis anyway. Um, some of them provided it to us without us, nudging them, but most of them you had to call every month and just say, okay, here's what we've got for you. Has any of that changed? And suddenly you got red lines everywhere because everything's changing constantly. So, yeah, that's how that happened.
Now, just to get a scope of the size of the business, how many copies of the newsletter are you sending out at, um, let's say 81, 82?
Yeah, I mean, it was around, I think around 5 or 6,000.
Okay.
Uh, and an awful lot of them were going overseas to what they call APO, FPO addresses, which is the
Mm,
Army and the Navy. So the good thing about that, it was still that they could do a subscription at a domestic rate sort of thing.
mm.
And once I had pasted it up, because at that time we didn't have publishing software, so everything had to be cut and paste on a board.
That was
Uh,
going to be my next question because it
oh,
looks very professional. I mean, it's
I mean, and of course, I look back, and with the publishing software that came later, because I also did a newsletter for the Black Music Department called The Real Dope. And what that was mom and pop Black retailers, of which there were hundreds, if not thousands, because they couldn't buy directly from Warner Brothers. So it's the same concept. They had to buy through what we call one-stops, distributors.
mm,
And so they were not getting news as far as what's coming and who's in the studio, what have you. So the real dope meaning, here's the real dope, here's what's really happening. And it was 4 to 6 pages, and it would be on what artists are in the studio, what they're doing, had I heard any of it, da 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 da. And then it was so and so has just announced a tour. Here's the albums that are getting ready to come out. So suddenly they had something to talk to their consumers about that the guy down the street didn't know about. And that got up to about 3,000 a month.
oh wow.
So, yeah, and I was, at that point, starting to get publisher software, some of the early, and I mean, that made it just so much easier because it was just really hard because I mean, I had a artist board easel and boards and, the old fashioned way. So I'd take it to the printer and on my way to work, drop it off. The next day I'd pick it up and then there was a kid down the street that I could just pay a few dollars an hour. He'd come over in the evening and we would sit on the floor and stuff them. And then I had a thing with the post office where I could get a discount rate, but I had to pre-sort them into zip codes. So, and they had to be put in bags and, and so then on the way to work the third day, I'd drop those off at the post office. So it was mom and pop in the very true sense.
And the fulfillment of orders, and the stock that was going out. And if I understand it correctly, the newsletter was attached to a catalog of available titles, correct?
Um, the catalog is separate.
Okay,
This catalog, which we called the menu, because it was Video Takeout, was the name of the company. So it was the
gotcha.
menu. So there'd be a section of cables, and they would be the appetizers, and then we just went through. And the newsletter, if if it was a gaming person and they weren't a subscriber, I would send them one newsletter with the one sheet on how to subscribe. But they would just get the one, because it had to support itself as far as the printing costs and that sort of thing.
Hmm.
You couldn't have it as a giveaway. Um, so they were really two separate things. I mean, we had a lot of people who subscribed to the newsletter who didn't buy from us.
Oh,
They,
okay.
yeah, they, because we had people all through the states. So some of them never bought from us. So one must assume they were buying the stuff locally. There wasn't any requirement. We set it up as basically two separate things. But Celeste was there, and she would take the orders, because well, we'd get a bunch by mail, but then we had a 1-800 number, so a lot of people called in orders, and so she would process them, and then we had a gal came in twice a week and helped package, and then I would go home at night and package, and we had UPS came to the house every day and picked up, and then the stuff that was going overseas or PO box. Once a week, I would load my car up on the way to work, stop at the post office, and send out however many hundreds of boxes had to go out with that. So, I mean, I look back on it now and I'm like, I don't know how we did it, but younger, braver.
Yeah, it sounds like a very, very elaborate business. Now, so you also had to have relationships with distributors for both the video and video game product. Uh,
Yes.
how do you even establish those kind of relationships at this time? I mean, you don't just pick up a phone book and find a distributor of video cassettes, for example, or
No, in the case of, well, we had made connect, because again, we were going to CES, which the Consumer Electronics Show, which
okay.
happens twice a year, one in Chicago and then Vegas. And we went from the very beginning. Celeste and I went. And when you go as a retailer, I mean, we went actually initially just as a retailer, and then we had two badges. We had a retail badge and the computer entertainer. And in fact, when we had the newsletter, we actually had a small booth at a couple of CESs, just so to make more people aware. But when it came to buying from distributors, all you got to do is get one or two nabbed, and then through them you can say, how can I get such and such, and they put you on to other people. So
Oh, really? Okay.
yeah, they do. Yeah, because that was the kind of relationship we had with folks, and um, they just said that they seemed to like what we were doing, and a couple of them would even, because at one point we did move out into a small, um, not factory, but that sort of environment, because you were tripping over stuff all over the house. It just got to that point, and then you're trying to be taken a bit more professionally, because when these because we would have product reps come and visit, because they would want us to carry more of their stuff and that sort of thing. And I said to Celeste at one point, I said, it's a big move, because it's suddenly a whole different overhead. But if we want to grow, that's what we need to do. So they were, really quite helpful. And there were a couple of there was a distributor called Ingram, and they might even still be around. And you could get any bloody movie you wanted, and you could buy just one and get it overnight. So we didn't have to stock stuff. Um, because again, we were underfunded. I mean, let's be honest. It's not like the big guys who, they're working with tens of thousands of dollars. They're moving that constantly, and if you have a couple of bad months, oh well, you're okay. But I mean, it's just like the mom and pop shops that disappear more and more, whether they're the local, grocery store or what. I mean, they can't compete.
Hmm.
Uh,
Yeah.
they can't compete price-wise, because the big guys are buying them in big lots, so they're getting a much better price. and they're getting the quantity because it's easier to sell to them than it is the little guys. Oh, you only need 6. Well, now I got to take that out of a box. And I mean, there are some distributors that wouldn't sell to us because we didn't have the volume to make it worth their while. I could understand that. So yeah, I mean, Ingram, we actually got all of our movies from, and if I remember correctly, I think we got all of our blank tape from them as well. And then when we go to CES, we would make more connections and, weed out the ones that, okay, can we get a better price over here? But we were looking to try to carry things that the normal place might not carry, because otherwise, why are people going to come to us if it's something they can buy anywhere? So this is where John was a big help because of him being such a nerd when it came to computers and all of that. He would come up with, oh, well, such and such is really great to use. And he would do a write up so people would realize, well, it was great to use, but it's something I'd never heard of. And, we would source it and suddenly we'd sell a bunch of whatever that thing was. So, when you're small like that, you have to find something different, to give somebody a reason to come to you, because otherwise I might as well go to Target. I might as well, same with records. I mean, I'll go to Best Buy or, because they've got the top 20 and I just want one of those and it's easy and they're cheap, et cetera, et cetera. And I can do my other shopping while I'm there. So,
Gotcha.
yeah.
Now,
Well,
in the newsletter, because like I've said, I have read a lot of your writing now over the years. I have to say, I mean, obviously I did not read it at the time, but going back through them, they're absolutely amazingly written.
well, thank
Because,
you.
and no, it really, I can hear the voice behind it. The reviews feel like, yeah, I played this thing. Let me
Yeah.
tell you about it without being high-minded about it, without, it's like, is this fun? Where did the fun stop for me?
Mm.
The graphics. If the box didn't tell me what it was supposed to look like, I wouldn't know. Things like that. I mean, it just feels very real.
Yeah,
The
it's
way,
interesting to say that. That's good to hear.
yeah, no, and it comes through, especially because I mean, I played a lot of those or used a lot of those programs as a kid, and the reviews in magazines always seemed to be people trying to sell themselves. It was like, this is the stepping stone on my career.
Oh, really?
Whereas,
Okay.
well, I
Okay.
mean, a lot of the people who were writing for the magazines back then tried to then get into screenwriting and all sorts of other things.
Okay. Okay.
What's his name? The guy who does Black Mirror, Charlie Brooker. He
Oh, yeah.
started out as a game reviewer for a magazine.
Oh,
Oh yeah,
interesting.
oh yeah. He used to do
I
these.
missed my calling. I could have been a screenwriter.
Well, his reviews would often just go off and into these tangents where he's talking about philosophy and stuff and
Oh,
making very dark jokes and not even talking about the games anymore, really. It's
okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Uh, but so I was when looking at all of this, I was always not. I didn't know when I first started reading the newsletters, but now that I know it, since you were dealing with the media side of the music industry,
Yeah.
and there were publications reviewing albums and so forth, was there any influence on what you had read or seen in video and music reviews and so forth that influenced the way you approached writing the newsletter?
No. And I could say this for Celeste also, because Celeste was, well, first of all, she was a very good writer in her own right. Okay. She actually was she worked, she did computer work, but she did technical editing and what have you for a couple of places she worked at and what have you. So her style is her style. And that would be exactly the same with me. Um, if I I don't consider myself a writer, but if I am excited about something or interested in something, I can just write like there's no tomorrow. I mean, high school, I ran the school newspaper for 2 years. And at that point in my life, I did write some essays and poems and I guess that's because I am very much a creative type person. Um, and then, I mean, after Prince died, I wrote a book, and that was as a catharsis for me, not about, I had to be encouraged to write it, but a couple of people felt I had some good stories to tell. And, people afterwards said they really felt like they saw Prince they hadn't seen before because of how I wrote. So it's the way I write. And I find if I'm reading someone else that I either really like the way they write or I don't. And if I don't read any further. I'm just, yeah, I just sort of like, um, I don't worry about structure. I don't worry about all the rules that they have. I'm sure they got lots of rules like on everything else. Um, I'm, I'm a nonconformist. I'm very independent. I don't like people telling me what to do. And when it comes to writing something, I'm just going to write what I feel. So I'm writing from that level. So I would say definitely I would not have been influenced by others, um, you know. So I guess I won't be a screenwriter.
Well, most of them weren't either. It's
Well, there you go. There you go. Well, that's Hollywood for you, isn't
there you
it?
go. Yes. Okay, so the newsletter is going out. It's a wonderful tool to let customers know what's coming. It's a wonderful tool for letting them know what you think is good or bad or entertaining or useful, especially later on in the computer entertainer days. There's a lot of good reviews of things like Print Shop and programs like that, which I
Yeah.
find very insightful to look at now.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, no, as someone who has that creative bent as well, I mean, the moment I got Newsroom on my C64, video gaming almost stopped. And then it was just like, let's make fun newspapers.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
oh yeah, it was a great piece of software. Is one of the reasons why my show is called the Video Game Newsroom Time Machine, for that very
Well,
reason. So now you're going back now to the evolution of the industry. You said that you saw that, there were things going on at Atari. Obviously, we get into 82, 83, where the video game industry is getting really, really big and then is going to be way too big for its own good.
yeah.
It's going to collapse. And I'd really like to know, I mean, you probably are you feeling any of it, not just from the newsletter and the retailer standpoint, but also from the I'm part of Warner Brothers standpoint?
Well, yes, because in fact, that was when we had a huge layoff in 82 at the record company. It had become bloated, secretaries having secretaries and this and that, and a lot of music that should not have been released. Okay, there wasn't that yeah, they had started the A&R department, which is the department that signs artists. Okay, artists and repertoire is what that is. They were going a little Burko on signings, um,
Mhm.
and
Was there a
so
particular reason? Some was it the rise of music videos? I'm trying to
more
remember
money, more
exactly when
money, more
MTV
money,
hit and
more
stuff.
money, more money.
Oh, so they were basically just getting a percentage of what whoever they signed, and then didn't
No,
matter,
it
or
wasn't that, but it was like we're going to have all of them, and it's like it
ah,
becomes almost a competition among the big guys like CBS, Warner Brothers. You had A&M, Epic. There were a few that were in that top tier, and you get into bidding wars too. Uh, Now, I'm the first one to say that I cannot hear an artist in the making to save my life. If I went to a little club and there was somebody playing there, I would no more know if that guy is going to make it or not. But that's what the A&R people do. They're hunting the clubs. They're hunting, da da da. And the business, the music business, was just growing. And I mean, the records were just selling more and more and more and more. So it's like, oh, well, then let's get even more so that we can sell more. I mean, it's Atari all over again. It's the
Hmm.
same concept. And I know that it was heartbreaking for people like Mo and Lenny Warnock, who we work with who were record people, to have to cull a lot of these artists from the roster because they're so artist orientated. And Warner's was known for signing a lot of eclectic artists. I mean, our roster was very varied. I mean, you had a Joni Mitchell, who's great. Does she sell a lot of records? Bonnie Raitt. I mean, you have, and what it came down to, and this was, I know, a very hard one for them because they're record people before they're business people, is that they have to put their business hat on and say, okay, we've signed this artist for X, and based on what they've done, they're not coming anywhere close to X. And it's the costs involved, and of course the costs were getting higher because now we're in the universe of there has to be a video for everything. So the costs exponentially are going up, and we'd have some weeks. Now, of course, this is a cross format, so it's not, you're not, but we might release 20 new singles and 12 new albums.
What? That many?
Yeah. And that's just Warner Brothers, okay?
Yeah, yeah.
So again, I mean, a few of them might be country, black, pop, so they're not all going in the same place. But imagine being a local promotion guy who has to walk into radio each week, and his boss is saying, we need to get these on the radio. Plus, oh, there's the ones from last week and the week before that aren't on yet, so you got to get them on too. And the radio station has maybe 30 slots, and they're talking to 10 record labels.
Oh, Jesus.
So do the math.
Yeah, no, it's not possible. I mean, at some point, something's going to get squeezed out.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Ugh.
And so it was, I think on many levels you could see it coming. And you knew something was going to happen, and we weren't the only one, but I mean, there was, uh, uh, gosh, half of departments were gone. I mean, every department had to let go people. It was just a question of how many. And then at the same time, they were letting go of artists. So it was, and it was right in that same time frame. Because again, I go back to it because I remember thinking the only thing that saved me at that point was I had this little magic box that was spitting out reports and nobody could figure out how I was doing it. So
Got to have an edge.
yeah, but
Uh,
that's the thing. It really is. Yeah.
so you're seeing a decline in the music side. You're seeing a
Yep.
decline in the video game side, or at least a glut of product. And uh, what is your reaction? I mean, is there a pivot now to the computer side? Is there a pivot
Much so.
into something else?
We had already started pivoting because our consumers were asking us about games for computers. Again,
Gotcha.
go right back to the consumer. What are they telling us? And you don't just let them tell you something and let it go in one ear and out the other. And that's what happens with some people. They don't listen. They're not paying attention. Because you can try to slam something down on a consumer all you want, but it's not going to work. It's just not going to work. And there's only so many disposable dollars. And there was no question in my mind, and Celeste and I were talking on an ongoing basis because she and I were both computer orientated, and we could see what was happening. Because again, we were also talking to people inside the company, the companies that were telling us certain things on the QT, knowing that we would not print it and that we would not tell anybody. Consumer calls up, and we're not going to say, "Oh, guess what? Such and such." Um, so it all goes back to relationships, which is probably the number one word I use with people. When I mentor them, whatever, I said it's relationships. Because it's just like you walk into a store, who has the customer service? Because all the stores are selling the same thing. So if
True.
you've got the customer service, that's where a person's going to come back because they know they're going to be treated correctly and they're going to, get what they need. And so it's about relationships and caring about the people you talk to. And I mean, I use that on the record side so many times, wasn't even funny. I mean, the stuff I got just as a result of paying attention to people and also having started as a secretary myself, I knew what it was like to be invisible. And yet those are the
That's
people who know what's going on because everything's crossing their desks.
that's true. That's true.
Yeah, I mean, at BET, Black Entertainment TV, who I worked with very closely for many years, I had all the direct numbers to call the producers and all of that. So, I mean, I had great access. But if they weren't at their desk, it would go back to the receptionist, who to this day, 25, 30 years later, we're still in touch. And I
Oh,
would say,
that's awesome.
how's it going? What's happening? How's your kids? And I said, oh, I haven't sent you any CDs lately. Is there anything you want? She said, oh, I'd really like such and such. I said, consider it done. And I would have it out to her the next day. So it wasn't just words. And she said, who are you looking for? And I said, oh, I'm looking for, you know, John Paul, whatever. She said, oh, well, he's in the studio. I'm going to put you through to the studio.
Oh,
So
that's awesome.
yeah, I mean, and it worked the same because Celeste was very good at that too, because she talked to these people. I mean, we got to the point where a lot of them called us. So but that's what made the difference. Yeah, and the fact you're not chasing advertising, you're not, it's like, oh God, they're on the phone. What do they want now? Sort of thing. So they're not ducking and dodging you. So we were able to produce a product that maybe had a bit of an edge over a lot of the others because of all of those things. And that's what kept us going as long as we went.
Yeah.
Uh,
A- And you also had a much faster turnover time than
yes,
other
yes,
publications. I mean,
yeah,
everybody else, I mean, I try to read everything based on the publication date, again, the chronology thing in my show. And I'm reading news from you, and then I'm seeing the same news 2 or 3 months later in a glossy publication.
yeah, because of their lead times.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, when we came back, whenever we went to CES, because we'd come back with monstrous information, that was more of an information newsletter than it was reviews. And I would stay up half the night for like a week. And I would make sure that and we'd have people calling, have you sent it out yet? Have you sent it out yet? And we had this sort of thing of we would send it within 1 week of CES, which
Mhm.
means within 2 weeks of CES, they have it in their hands. And then they can brag to all their friends about all the stuff they know. And then their friends are like, well, how'd you find that out? Nobody knows that. Well, I have my sources. So it turned into that as well.
Yeah.
Gamesmanship, I guess. Yeah,
Bragging rights. You got to have them. I mean,
that's exactly right. I mean, because there were a lot of things that we didn't have going for us. We didn't have the four-color glossy. We didn't have, that kind of spread. So you have to find an edge somewhere else.
hmm.
So, and that to me is marketing. It's like, okay, what do we have that the other guy doesn't have? Because we know all the stuff we don't have that they have. So we got to play up what it is we have and make that the most important thing. And suddenly the consumer says, ooh, I was missing not having that, even though I
Hmm,
didn't know what that was. So, it's making people think they need something that maybe they don't even need, but that's that's what
true.
that's what it's about, really.
Hmm. So, I wanted to touch on something you mentioned in relationship to the layoffs in '82,
Mhm.
namely the higher costs, especially on the video side. Because we talked about, the lack of synergies between the departments. When music videos become an issue, is there any attempt to work with the existing movie or television side to
It's a
coordinate?
different animal altogether.
Okay.
Yeah, because um, the formats are so vastly different. Television, of course, we were set up one way. I mean, the TV division and the movie division didn't work together.
Yeah.
Again, their own entities. And music videos, um, we actually had a video department at Warner Records, and there was a fellow who ran it, and he was in charge of the budgets. He was in charge basically of hiring the directors and getting the storyboards. And then there were about four other people in the video department who their job was to actually, they were sort of like a project manager. They'd go out on the video shoots, they'd just make sure, everything. And then, of course, as videos became more and more of a thing, then that department, expanded and what have you. But um, it definitely was a big cost factor. I mean, everybody just expected to have a video, and the black artists didn't always get them, so there was like that whole thing. Um, but yeah, I mean, that was a whole other. But it was all within the record company.
Mm. And since you had such a close relationship with Prince, who his videos were always something epic, and you could it almost it felt to me at least, and correct me if I'm wrong, that he had a lot of influence on how those were created.
Let's put it this way: he did them. They were always done totally within Paisley. We had basically nothing to do with them other than funding.
Gotcha.
So
Now, and
he
I'm
would
yeah.
literally, because because he kept crazy hours, whatever, 3 o'clock in the morning. I remember one of his people it was Thanksgiving dinner. The phone rang, and it was Prince, and he wanted to do a video first thing in the morning. And my friend is like, "Well, you realize it's Thanksgiving. I don't care." And so that was the end of Thanksgiving. And overnight, they had to put a whole production crew together.
Wow.
And then it was Prince's vision,
So
So
nobody got to do any Black Friday shopping that year.
mm, no, not there, not then.
Um,
Yeah.
So, and I'm kind of curious because I can imagine there's a lot of musical acts and artists who are brilliant as musicians, but would not have had the the talents or the skills or the vision to put that into a visual medium.
Well,
And so,
that's
what
that.
was that
Yeah.
like?
Well, that is very true. And or they would have a vision that just didn't work. So that's where the fellow that ran that department had a very strong background in video, and he was very good at that. But it would be sometimes a negotiation with the artist manager, with the artist. But see, what was starting to happen more and more, not maybe in the early '80s, because that was still sort of the infancy of it, but artists, when they actually recorded their songs, already had a video in their head. So even maybe when they're writing it, I don't know. I never had that discussion with, and so when they have an absolute vision, of translating their song to a video, it can be very difficult to say that might not work. So John, the fellow who ran the department, I mean, it was, he had quite a job, but he was very well respected. And I wasn't involved in that aspect at all, but I'm sure there would have been probably, and with management too, because management sometimes I'm sure doesn't totally agree with what the artist has come up with, but they're managing them, so it becomes uh, a thing of diplomacy to see what worked. But a lot of times, like the artist might say, well, I'd like so and so as the director, sort of thing, because they've seen some of the work that day. And so the director already has props, as far as and so the director may like totally agree with the concept, but let's tweak this, or this, or gee, how about you want to think about such and such, which could be something else altogether. And the artist be like, oh my God, that's amazing. Let's do it. So it's, again, creatives at work, not necessarily easy. And then there are other artists who just totally put it in the hands of, what you're doing, and oh yeah, that sounds good, et cetera, et cetera. So, but I mean, a lot of like Antoine Fuqua, who has just directed the new Michael Jackson movie, he started out as a video director,
Hmm.
and he's moved on to he directs feature film now. So
Yeah.
it's a way for some of them to get started.
And there's a phenomenon that and this is not about video games, but since I have somebody from the music industry, I've always wondered about this. The choice of what becomes a single from an album. I mean, if I understand correctly, if you go back to the 50s and even the 60s, it's all about the singles, and the album is sort of an afterthought type of thing. By the time you get to the 70s, 80s, it felt to me like it was always we start with an album and then we figure out what's going to be the single from it. Was that the thought process, or?
That's a bit too simplistic for how it really worked. I can't speak for the 50s or 60s, but um, how it worked, a lot of it had to do with format. If it was AOR, which is album orientated rock, then the album leads, okay?
Okay,
And a cut will surface, probably.
gotcha.
Um, what happens in like in pop radio, and certainly in black music, where my background is that a single is chosen, and I'll go into that process in a minute, and that will be put out maybe 6-8 weeks before the album, because he's trying to start garner interest in the album. And then by the time the album releases, you might even be at the point where it's ready for the second single, and the second single releases right about the time as the album. Okay. You rarely, I can't think of any, I really can't think of much of any situation where the album came out first, because
Okay.
black radio is single orientated. Okay, so they want a single. As far as choosing the single, there's a lot of different ways to do it. A lot of it depends on the artist. Let's take just a midline artist that is looking for feedback and this and that. Very often it can come out of the A&R department, the artist and repertoire, because they may have hired the producer for the album in conjunction with the band or the singer or what have you, and they're in the studio a lot of the time while it's being, and so they will start recognizing what they feel is the single. Then,
Oh,
what happens? Whether or not the A&R person has recognized what a single could be, because the problem with A&R people is they don't have what we call radio ears. So what they think is really great might not work at radio. So the smart money comes up to, in our case, the black music department, and maybe they only play it for the head of black music. But if they're really smart, they play it for 3 or 4 of us. They play it for the head of radio promotion. They play it for the head of sales, be myself, and there might be 1 or 2 others in there. And sometimes it's slam dunk. It's just like I remember Larry Graham. It was from Sly and the Family Stone, and then he was a solo artist with us. He had a song called "One in a Million You," and he we were having a department meeting. All the locals were in from around the country. There were about 20 of us or so in a hotel suite in Los Angeles, just doing the stuff you do when the department meets and what have you. And he came over for lunch just to say hi, thank you for all your support, da 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 da. And he pulled me aside and he said, I want you to hear something. And he put on this song, One in a Million You. You can Google it. And I said, oh my God, Larry, that's a #1 song. That is, and I normally would not say that because you're asking for trouble. And sure enough, it went #1. And it was just so strong. And I hadn't heard any of the rest of the album. But it very often, if they play it for the people who are working radio and working sales, with those are the ones closest to the consumer, then theoretically they put a lot of weight into what they're saying. But then you have times where an artist is, because being artist orientated, we always gave the artist the last choice. So we never said, no, that's not what we're going to do. We just didn't do that. And sometimes an artist would be adamant, no, I want such and such. And time after time, it would be the one that we picked because of it, what radio is going to. And so sure enough, as soon as the album comes out, they dump that other song and they go right into that other cut. Because radio, they're looking for certain formula, if you will. I mean, someone like Prince, of course, he picks it, full stop. And a couple of times where Lenny and Mo suggested that probably wasn't the best thing to do. Well, we still ran with what Prince wanted. So
Yeah. I was just wondering, and I just played a couple of bars of One in a Million You, and yes, I definitely know that song. Um,
yeah,
and I was always just wondering because there's the occasional act where you hear the single, and you're like, "Oh my goodness!" And then you listen to the rest of the album, and you're like, "That's the single was something completely unusual for that artist,
yeah.
very different." And suddenly you're like, "Okay." The biggest example in my history was I went Mr. Big. I'm not sure if you remember, they were an act in the 90s and they had 2 singles. They were both sort of, very poppy ballads, love,
Yep.
schmaltzy things. The rest of the album was basically hard rock.
Oh,
and
geez.
and they opened
Oh,
for Aerosmith. I went to an Aerosmith concert. Mr. Big was the opener. I was like, oh my God, this is going to be terrible. Why did they put these schmaltzy guys on there? And they come out and they're playing, and it's like, this is great. But the entire audience that was there for the first act were these teenage girls, like 14, 15 years old, and they're just freaking out. They don't know what's going on. It was the
yeah.
weirdest combination I'd ever seen.
And I mean, that does happen. And of course, what happens is time and time again in those situations, it really works against the artist because
Hmm.
on the next album, people are whichever side the person liked, there was that other side that was totally not their thing at all. And so they're very reticent
Hmm.
to buy that next album.
Yeah, they got a second album and that was it. That is sadly, because
Yep.
I saw them live. They were really, really good. But if you just listened to the singles, you would have never known what they were actually about. It was sad.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so going back now, getting back onto what we were originally talking about. So we have the crash, we have the transition to computer software. Now, as a retailer, in Does that in any way significantly change the way you're approaching it? Is there something different about the way the computer software market worked as opposed to the video game software market?
Not really. It was more genre. But people bought by genre. I mean, there were those who liked uh, action shoot 'em ups, other ones like sports, other ones like the puzzle mystery type things, and so it would go by genre. And it took a while also too to kind of figure out which computers people were buying and using. But again, from the mail order aspect of it, we weren't having to keep stock because we would buy as we needed it. And so which was an advantage over stores. Of course, the big stores could return the stuff. The little stores, you're stuck with it. Um, so it was more genre based, and then certain computers got more of a name for themselves as being good gaming computers and what have you. So and just like in the gaming industry, in the computer industry, there was a shakeout as far as what what systems people were buying and what have you, because it was getting a little bit crazy. It's like every time we turned around, it seemed like somebody was announcing a new system.
And this is another big question because I mean, when a lot of those systems first come out, they're not necessarily cheap. Uh, you must have had a ton of different systems sitting around, plugged in, ready to go to test. You must have
Yeah.
been constantly having to buy. Now, obviously, you've already mentioned that your husband was always big on buying the latest and greatest thing anyway. But how complicated was that setup when you got the C64, you've got the Apple IIs and all these other systems running simultaneously in the market?
Yeah, first of all, I mean, we had the Apple II in house anyway. We had a PC because of him, and the other ones we got loaners from the companies.
Oh, really?
Because, yeah, they gave us loaners. With we'd sign an agreement that we'd return them, whatever. Some of them got returned, some of them didn't, just because that's how it works.
Depending on
Uh,
whether or not the company survived.
yeah, well, that's the other thing, yes. And we kind of divided it up between, because my Celeste had moved out by then, was in her own place. So the things that she was interested in tended to be on one or two of the systems. She also had an Apple of her own. And then John just wired up. We had years earlier, we had converted the garage to like a rumpus room kind of thing, and we had built-in cabinets and blah blah and a big TV. And so we had wires everywhere. I mean, it just, he had it just, we had it just set up, and you dealt with it. I mean, you just dealt with it. And if it suddenly something didn't work, I'd be like, could you come in here and have a look? So yeah, I'm sure, I'm sure that the gaming magazines and stuff would have had the same issues.
Oh, definitely, definitely. I mean, and now speaking also of this era, because there were certain pieces in the video game update and computer entertainer where, for example, when the Atari 7800, which
Oh yeah.
was the one that they said was going to come out, you guys had hands-on reviews. I think it was Pole Position 2 was the packing game or
Oh,
something,
yep, yep.
and then it didn't come out. And I still remember there was a piece, I don't know which one of you wrote it, about how Atari really should bring this out. The industry needs this kind of device right now and all this other stuff. Um it almost felt like, you know uh, more of a call to arms, if you will, or a, let's save this industry,
Hmm. Hmm.
from a fan standpoint, even more than a retailer.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, just how deep did you guys get in on what gamers would consider an emotional level with the product?
Well, you did when a game And I remember pole position too well because I mean that was I reviewed it because I'm a car nut,
Ah,
and I just like yeah I'm a fan. Yes, I'm reviewing it, but this is something I would do in my spare time, and well, we felt it deserved to be out there. But Atari being Atari, they were the most difficult to penetrate. They just they weren't friendly. They weren't. You couldn't like ever really get a person that you could talk to on a regular basis, what have you. So it's sort of like whistling at the moon. Did they even? I mean, I don't remember how it is that they even gave us a 7800 to use. Uh, Somebody, because we were always begging for stuff from them. They were the most difficult.
really? Uh,
Mm.
I'm, I gotta ask, was there any attempt to sort of leverage the fact that you were at Warner in order to get in there, or was
I
that too dangerous?
No,
Yes.
um, I kept the two things very separate. People at Warner's had no idea I had this business. Now, I wouldn't have been the only person who had a side thing going on, but no, it was something I would never have considered doing. Mm-mm, just
Gotcha.
wouldn't. Yeah, I
Gotcha.
mean, yeah, I just wouldn't. Yeah.
Now, when Atari gets into the big financial troubles,
Yep.
and the way that it's seen nowadays from a historical standpoint is that it basically almost takes all of Warner with it.
Mm.
Um, and you already had the layoffs in '82 and so forth. End up getting a lot of restructuring and the sale of Atari itself. What's the feeling inside of Warner Music at those changes? Is there a real threat that one of the divisions that gets sold off is Warner Music as well?
I don't think anyone ever thought that. We had such a strong reputation in the business and such a strong artist roster. Um, I know whether this naivety or what, but we all felt pretty invincible. And of course, what's interesting about that, let's fast forward to 2001, and Warner, because Time is out of it at that point, I think, merges with AOL. And a lot of us knew that that was just a bad idea. It made no sense to us until you looked at the fact that the top people, like Steve Case at AOL and Levin at Time Warner, were going to walk out of there like billionaires, sort of thing. And I will never forget at the Steve Ross Theater. It's a beautiful theater they have on the lot, okay, where they have employee screenings and what have you. And they called a meeting for the vice presidents from the different companies. And so I went to that meeting because it was going to be Gerald and Levin and Steve Ross and Ted Turner, and they were all going to talk about how wonderful the world was going to be. So there were a couple hundred of us in there when you looked at all the different divisions and what have you. And they're going on about how amazing this merger is going to be. And one soul who very bravely got up and put his hand up and said, oh, because they said, one of the things they said, because the stock at that time was 30 something a share, okay? And was Steve Case who said, oh, with this merger, it's going to go to $100. And so this guy raises a hand and he stands up and he said, well, how's that going to happen? And Ross, not Ross, but yeah, not Steve Ross, so Steve, anyway, the guy from AOL, Steve Case, that's it is.
Case, yeah.
Yeah. He says, well, that's up to all of you in this room. So we walked out, none of us feeling really good about things. Um, and it started to be rumors about packages, uh, being offered. And so in January of 2001, they had it so they didn't get in trouble because it has to be offered the same to everybody. So they had it anybody over 50 who had at least 10 years with the company and was at a certain level or above. So they wanted to get rid of all the high-priced executives, basically. And so and it was a very attractive package. And honestly, I didn't want to leave, but at that point, I was in the jazz department, and it was hard for me to imagine that the jazz department would survive this sort of merger because jazz is about integrity. It's about all that. It's not about making money, really.
Yeah.
And so I accepted the package, and I was going to leave in April, and I was in the stairwell going upstairs and ran into the CEO. And he said, I understand you've taken the package. And I said, yes, I have. He said, I wish you wouldn't. And I said, why? He said, well, you're not on the list. And I said, well, David, can you guarantee that I'll have a job a year from now? Well, no, I can't. In fact, David was let go 6 months later. The jazz department, I left in April. The jazz department was closed in July. So
Wow.
the people that were still there, they were let go without a package. And what I'm getting to is that what you're talking about back with Atari, lo and behold, and we were all stunned, but Warner/AOL sold off the record division, and Warner Brother Records no longer exists.
Wow. I didn't
It is
know that.
now, yeah, what happened was there was an agreement that some of these got people bought Warner Brother Records, and they had the use of the name for 5 years. And so when that passed several years ago, it's now Warner Records, but it has absolutely nothing to do with the corporate entity. And it's a shadow of what it was because, well, like with that package, there were there were four people in the what did they call it? Graphic production department. And they were the people who physically would bring together the artwork, whatever, and have the actual CD package made.
Mhm.
Okay. The actual physical. Well, three of the four were eligible for the package and they took it. And only one person was left, and it was a secretary.
Oh, Jesus.
So, no, it gets better. For 3 months, 3 months, because no one knew how to put the packages together, they shipped no records.
Oh my goodness. You're going from something like, well, what you said at the height of 12 singles a week to nothing shipped for 3 months.
Something like that. They actually went back to the gal who ran the department because she and I were in touch. She was getting ready to move to Michigan. She was like a lot of us, we just sort of like, okay, that's it. It's the industry's changing. It's going to streaming. Everything's different. Maybe this is the universe telling me it's time to move on. She said they actually came to her with it because part of the package was we could never work for a Warner company again. And so she gets approached with a consulting package that was more than she made when she was there, just so they could get. And she told them where they could put it. And so,
Oh man.
I mean, so stranger things have happened. So the Atari didn't put us out. It was that stupid merger, which made no sense. It just
No,
made
no, none at all.
no,
It was,
no.
oh, that's so sad.
Oh,
It's such an end to such a historically important company, or at least a division of the company.
yes. Yeah, yeah. Well, no, it's a company. I mean, we're
Yeah,
not really a division. It's a company, part of a corporation, and
yeah.
um, it, yeah, it was hard to describe. In fact, they've got a reunion next month, and I mean, first of all, it's a long flight and expensive, but I just thought, no, what I had was really great, and to try to go back now and replicate it with people, yes, people I cared about, but we've all moved on. We've all moved on to other lives. We're
Mm.
all of us to a one are extraordinarily grateful for what we were part of. At the time, I don't think we realized it was that important because you're busy doing your job.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like the newsletter. I had no idea the impact we were having, like what you shared earlier, and what Frank told me, and then suddenly seeing that I had no idea we were being used as a reference for Wikipedia, because you're just like,
Yeah.
oh my God, I got to do 10 reviews tonight. You're just not thinking about it, and you're trying to put out the best product you can, so you're not disappointing the people that have paid money to get this, and are looking to you for information.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, it's just, different time and different place.
Yeah, and I can't emphasize enough how important it is as a reference point for us as we're trying to trying to catalog what happened because so much of it is missing. Most of the large companies have no historical records. EA kept nothing from the
Really?
early years. There is nothing.
No. Because they
Uh,
was an important part.
Yeah, I mean, there's huge swaths of material. For example, Nintendo, when they started re-releasing their old NES games on the Wii for the Virtual Store, they had to go and grab pirated ROMs off the internet because they didn't have any of the actual program code in-house anymore. Uh,
Wow.
yeah, it's unless individual programmers and designers kept some stuff,
But
nobody
then,
was thinking
then,
that
then
any
how
of
do
this
you?
was going to have a
Yeah.
value.
Well, see, it goes also back to what I was just saying, that you're so busy doing what you're doing, because it's like that they would have been under tremendous deadlines, and they're
Oh
like,
yeah,
doing their thing, and they're not thinking about, oh, well, I need to keep this for posterity. It's just, can I get a couple hours of sleep tonight?
yeah,
And oh, I've got this great idea for a new game. I mean, people ask me, did I keep a diary? And I said no. And looking back, I wish I had, because a lot of it's like vague. Um, I can remember certain bits and pieces that stand out, but I can't put them in context. And when I was traveling with artists and all the rest of it, I mean, you just, it's gone, because you're just at the time you're doing your job, and you're
that's
living your
true.
life, and you don't realize what you're doing is really part of something important. Because you're sort of caught up in it, and I'd be running around the building trying to get this or that, or talk to somebody, what have you, get back to my office, put it together, whatever. And I mean, with the newsletters, like, oh my God, how many do we have to review this month? And are there any news releases? Is there, I'd ask Celeste every day, did you talk to anybody that I need to make notes on? Because we might not even see each other for days. I would just call and say, what's happening, sort of thing. So yeah, it's just, and I'm surprised, but I'm not surprised
Mm.
that like an EA or what have you doesn't have anything from then. It's a
Yeah,
shame.
it is. And this is why those of us who are trying to piece what we can together, I mean, there's big efforts every time a magazine collection shows up on eBay. Everybody's like, let's throw money at it. To try to preserve it because at a certain point, it is an art form that you don't want to lose. I mean,
Yeah,
we've
yeah,
realized that in music. I mean, there's virtually no piece of music from the last 70 years that you can't get access to as long as it was recorded.
yeah.
But, there's a lot of other stuff from the very early era that's gone. And the period that we're talking about in video games was that early era. So,
Yeah, and I mean, it was really an art form in of itself.
yeah.
Uh, yeah. because it helps explain where we're at now. Uh,
Mm.
but yeah, well, it's the old story of how history gets lost, doesn't it? In so
Yeah,
many ways.
exactly.
It's a
Now,
shame.
yeah. Now going back to the mail order company.
Yep.
Uh you're there, you've transitioned from video games to computer games, and video games comes back at a certain point. 86, 87, Nintendo brings it back. What's your reaction to that? Is that a market that you see yourself being able to get back into, or where does the company go from there?
Well, we really didn't ever, quote unquote, leave it, because it never totally went away. There was a bit of a rumble, and the way we felt about, because of the commitment we made with the newsletter, that we would stick with it, and try to stay on top of it, because as long as, because my opinion was that in whatever form, gaming is not going away. Therefore, we must address it. It's not something that's going to just disappear. And I mean, that's proven today. It's as big as ever. It's different. I really don't have a clue what it is today, but it's there. And so, yeah, you continue to, because I know right up to the very end, we were ordering a lot of Nintendo product. So I mean, I do remember that. Yeah.
Now, when do you finally end the company and the newsletter? Is it a simultaneous thing, or
It is, yeah, it is simultaneous. It was, there had been a slowdown, and not just in the video games, but just overall. And again, you're now being glutted with the blockbusters and all these other things down at the corner that are handy to people. So our sales in movies and stuff was plummeting, because now you've got rental, you've got all these other ways to do it. So people, you're still selling them overseas, but that's not enough to keep things going. The newsletter was pretty steady, but that was kind of a wash. It was never, because I mean, I had Celeste's salary, we had the warehouse, so, and what I had done at the time seemed smart, but at some point you just have to take a deep breath and say either we don't do anything more or we try to expand, because we were treading water. And so I brought in this guy who I'd known for years, a really strong marketing exec. And he had all these ideas of ways he was going to expand us, and ended up all he did was put us in more debt, as far as the ideas. Well, we got to spend this to do that, and da da da, set up this, set up that, and but nothing was coming in. So, and then we had like a couple of months where it really, really, and again, being mom and pop, we didn't have this stash of cash that could keep us going. Um, and I said to Celeste, "Look, I'm exhausted. You're exhausted. Um, I look at this, and because my thought was that if the Warner job went away, or that at some point maybe I'd say Warner's bye bye. I'm just going to do this full time because I'm doing really well with it. It was clear that was not going to happen. Um, we needed more backing, and so actually through a couple of different people, I let it be known that the business was for sale. And because we had a phenomenal consumer uh, rapport, I mean, we had a really good base of customers and they loved us. I mean, we never got bad reviews, anything. We almost had it sold, and the guy pulled out. I don't remember why, or maybe I never knew why, I don't know. Because then there would have been some money that I could have split with Celeste, and we say, okay, at least, And I looked at her and I said, look, I can't. In the meanwhile, I incorporated the business to protect the house. And I said, I think this is it. And she didn't disagree. And so we just closed our doors, and that was that. What we did was we took no new orders. We returned orders, so no one was left, uh, paying for something they didn't get. Um, and it was just like, okay, that's it. I've lost you.
Oh, yeah.
Can you where you
When
are?
exactly did you close the door?
Well, let's see. John left me. He left me in 88. I'm going to say right around 1990, somewhere in, I don't remember exactly when.
Mm.
John had left by then. Um, I organized to get Celeste some money so that she'd have a transition time to find, something. Um, I'm going to say right around 1989, 90, somewhere in there.
Okay. And you're still then going to be at Warner's for another decade.
Yeah,
Um,
till 2001.
yeah.
Yeah, another
And
day.
and what did Celeste go and do after that?
Well, she went to work she did a couple of smaller things, but then she worked for a company called Linmark Engineering. And Linmark doesn't exist anymore, but it used to do soil testing for big corporation or for oil and sort of thing. And she did all, because it was a lot, because it's a very technical company. She did all the technical brochures and the reports, and that's why I say she's a very good writer. And she was doing a few things on the side. She also, like me, very, very into photography.
Oh,
And
cool.
yeah, we both are, but our styles are like a million miles apart. And so she was selling some of her photography, and then she retired from Linmark. She was there. Well, she was there when I left to come here. That was 2001. I'm going to say around 2010, maybe.
Okay.
Uh, that she retired because she'd always had bad health. She had polio as a kid, and
Uh,
just all through her life, she got the short straw when it came to health. And but so she passed about a year ago, which actually was she passed 1 month short of her 80th birthday, and no one thought she'd make it past 60. So, um, but no, I mean, yeah, so I mean, she was very involved with her photography, and she still was doing some tech writing and editing for people and what have you. She was doing some, just work, on her own, and putting, because I've actually talked to some of her friends, and they were hiring her for this, that, and the other thing, and what have you. So she still had her fingers in it. So, but yeah,
gotcha. And you're in Australia right now.
that's correct.
How did that come about?
Well, I have friends here, and to be honest, I was really burned out. At that point, as I mentioned, the last 5 years I was there, I was in the jazz department because it was a major, major change happening in the black music department. And fortunately, through a set of circumstances, as opposed to me getting caught up in the purge, they moved me over to jazz, which was great for me because there was a point in my life, age-wise, that the rap artists and stuff were not really relating to me, and vice versa, and jazz seemed to be the better place to be. Um, and the last couple of years, even before the merger, because it was becoming more accountants and lawyers, and I was finding myself, my boss actually worked in New York and I was in Burbank, and I remember one conversation particularly where he rang me and on a particular artist, and I was in charge of the marketing budget and what have you. And he said, I'd really like to do posters. Do we have it in the budget? And we're looking like $1,000, something like that.
Okay.
And I thought, something's wrong here. You know, this is crazy. This is not what I signed on for. And again, because my creative side was saying, ah, and so when the package came, it was sort of like, okay, someone's telling me something. And I got a couple of offers to go into management, but I could see we were right at the cusp of a major change in the business. I was I was tired, and what was going to be expected of me at the management companies, I was going to have to be one step closer to the artist, which I didn't necessarily want to be. And as I say, I had friends here, and they said, "Ah, why don't you come down because you're not going to survive in LA without the big job because it's that kind of city, you know."
Yeah,
And I thought, "Oh, that sounds interesting. Why not?" And so I sold my house for 30 years, and here I am.
very
Uh,
cool.
and I'm frankly very happy to not be there right now.
You and
Yeah,
me both. You have no idea.
unfortunately affects everybody everywhere, but we won't go there.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so, you know, it's a different lifestyle here. I don't like the fact that it's so far from everything because you can't just go somewhere for a weekend. I mean, coming to Europe is major.
Hmm.
But overall, it's good. You know, I share a house with someone, and we're close to the city, but we still are in the bush, and our back veranda looks down into a whole bushy area with a stream and a walking track and all kinds of incredibly beautiful birds. So certainly better than LA. Uh, so, and I mean, I had to go back to LA last year, of course, when my sister passed, and I hadn't been back for 10 years. And I found myself wanting to get out of there as fast as I could for lots of different reasons. The traffic, the vibe, the way people are feeling. You know, so let me get back to my birds and bush. So, yeah.
As someone who hasn't been back to the States in 8 years now, uh, and was really, really hoping to go back for his 50th birthday this year, and is probably going to have to scuttle that plan. I get it. I am very much happy just walking through my little city here.
Mhm. Yeah.
It's just a different, it's, yeah. But those are the sad, sad things.
Yeah, no, they are, and I can tell you that because I have obviously many friends here that I talk to on a regular basis, and many friends who just happen to be of color because of the music form I worked in,
Hmm.
and I've heard the stories and what have you, and they're very disconcerting. And then um, I just never envisioned being there to be quite as confronting as it was. So we'll leave it
Yeah.
at that. Um, so, I mean, we can only hope things get a little bit better sooner than later. But I do feel sorry for my friends who were there. But it affects the whole world, and certainly it doesn't matter where you are. If you're a U.S. citizen, it affects you. So, what
Yeah.
can I say? You uh, yeah.
Yeah. All I have to say is I was a public defender right before I left, and I kind of saw the writing on the wall. That was 13 years ago. Oh yeah.
Interesting.
Oh yeah. And it was in Florida. Florida is always the bellwether. If whatever's
Yeah.
happening in Florida, the rest of the country is just 5 years behind. And it was getting bad, really, really bad.
Wow.
So
Well, I
This is
mean,
my yeah.
when you hear some of the people say what they say when, they do the man on the street sort of thing, you sort of scratch your head and you wonder, could people be that dense? Um, but I guess they just see what they want to see, and then they watch the media that matches how they feel, and so it goes from there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
And the
it,
world we live in through information feeds makes
oh,
that all that much more possible.
well, of course it does. And I mean, the amount of misinformation that's out there on all sides. I mean, social media. I mean, I fact check everything anymore because I mean, even something that sounds like, oh, that must be right. You fact
Y-
check it and say, no, it's not right.
Yeah,
Uh, but too many people aren't doing that. And so, you know, well, there are way more followers than leaders. And yeah, that's what you get with followers. It's just like they're comfortable in an environment where they have someone to quote unquote look up to.
that and let's face it, everything nowadays. And I talked recently to a game designer who's been around in the business for almost 40 years,
Wow.
and he's still in it. And he told me, yeah, nowadays, things like online games and so forth, it's all designed around algorithms that are specifically designed to make you addicted to it. And that same technology is being used for the things like Twitter and YouTube and everything else. It's all just what he called addiction machines,
Jeez.
and that's the business model. I
I
mean,
mean,
it was always to keep you
I
playing, but yeah.
yeah, I mean, I remember back now in the 60s when I was with my husband, again, producer there, radio, what have you. He used to had a term called subliminal imprints. I don't know if you've ever heard that term.
Not subliminal imprints, subliminal messages, yes, but not
Yes,
imprints.
yeah, yeah. So, but he calls them subliminal imprints, and he was showing me examples, and they were already using it in radio, where they'd have these imprints of like there'd be let's say a commercial to buy a deodorant, and in the imprint it's saying buy now, but you can't hear it,
Oh wow.
but your
Hearing
brain
it.
picks it up. And he actually, I remember him bringing something home from one of those things, and he slowed it way down because of course we had that real deal VCR, as everyone did at that point.
Of
And
course.
suddenly you could hear it. You could
Oh
actually,
wow.
yeah, yeah.
Ah,
So
it's
yeah, it's scary stuff,
hmm. and
because
and
we're
this
all
is why I spend my time reading the video game update.
yeah, we had no subliminal imprints. What you read is what you get, okay?
Exactly.
Nothing more, nothing less. If we liked it, we liked it. It wasn't
There
like
you
buy
go.
now, buy now. That's what we should have done. We probably could have survived because we would have sold 10 times as many games. Oh God.
Build it
Anyway,
into the little screenshots,
yeah,
buy.
yeah, you have it go across so fast that you're not seeing it, but your brain is picking it up.
There you go.
Oh, okay.
Mary Lou, uh, I close off all of my interviews with the same two-part question.
Okay.
So, looking back at your career, and in this case, I'd go for either the retail or and the newsletter or music, because I find both of them equally interesting. What was one trend in the industry that you thought was going to be huge that ended up fizzling out and going nowhere? And what was one trend that you didn't see coming that became huge?
Goodness gracious. Well, I think one trend I didn't see coming and was huge was going from mail order to online. And that shopping online I mean, it's all I do.
Yeah.
Uh, and Of course, we didn't have online, we didn't have emails, we didn't have any of that, so you couldn't have, but I mean that, yeah, definitely. And then as far as something I thought would happen but didn't happen, well, any number of records I worked. That doesn't that doesn't count. Oh gosh, that's a hard one. Thought would happen that didn't happen.
Or at least wasn't as big as you thought it was going to get.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, ooh. Well, you got me stumped on that one because I'm actually thinking all three. Um, I could just say video takeout. I thought would be happening bigger. Um, no, because I mean, in many ways, I thought we would really grow and what have you, but the reality is, without the financial backing, I don't think anybody has a chance because you're gonna, hit rough months. So yeah, I'd probably go with that.
Excellent.
But
That perfectly legit.
yeah, and but saying that, having done that, not only did I feed Warner um, what I learned at Warner's into that, but that gave me a much better understanding of small business and what they go through. And then of course, when I talk about the small black retailer, and uh, I know when I would be out and about and I'd go to some of these retailers and I would say, oh, I'm the one who does this newsletter, what have you. They said, how do you know that that's what we need? Nobody pays attention to us. Nobody cares about us. I said, because I had a business that was in the same situation. And when you work at a big company like Warner's and you got a business card that's got the Warner Brother logo on it and it opens doors, it's like politicians not understanding what everyday people go through in having to fill gas and go to the store and buy food. They just have no understanding because unless it's the old story, until you walk in my shoes, you do not understand. So while, yeah, disappointing on one level, I think it made me a much better person at Warner's because of that, because it gave me an insight. Because one last story, I promise.
Oh,
Um,
please.
we, we had in this early 80s when things were really tough. George Benson, I don't know if you know, jazz artist, quite big, but doesn't matter. Anyway, anyone who is into jazz will definitely know him. And the guy in A&R who was dealing with George, this was a fellow, lovely guy, but he had no contact with reality. Like he wanted to take 8 friends to his favorite restaurant, so he did. They flew to Paris for the weekend.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, so he says to me all excitedly, he comes up to upstairs. We're talking to me about this new George Benson, going to be fabulous. He said it's a 3 record set. I said, "Are you crazy? Are you crazy? People can't buy food. What are you talking about?" That's when he told me, "Oh, I just went to Paris for dinner." I said, "Well, good on you. Must be nice." But I said, "You people can't afford a three." Well, how could you say that? Blah 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 blah. Well, they released it as a 2 album set, and it tanked because
Yeah.
what do you buy? You buy food, or you buy a 2 album when a 1 album would have been enough.
Mm.
So it goes back to understanding, of when you get to a point like this guy was, um, and that he had this kitchen in his house that was like better than anything you'd see in a restaurant. It overlooked all of LA and all that. He can't possibly understand people who are walking into the local market and counting out $1 bills. Do I have enough to buy food tonight?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's all these experiences that help you, if you pay attention, help you navigate and, be better. Not only at your job, but to be better. So with that, I'm done.
Mary Lou, I cannot thank you enough for the time you've given me and for the insight both into your retail experience, the creation of one of the most important documents for the work that I do on this podcast, but also for an insight into the recording industry in a way that I've never had before. So thank you
Good.
very much.
You're welcome. I've enjoyed it. You've asked some very good questions.
Oh, well, thank you. It's the old lawyer training kicking in.
Ah, yes, that's true. You would know how to hone in, wouldn't you?
Leave no thread untouched. You don't know what you're going to need in cross-examination later on.
Well, that would be true, wouldn't it? You never know what thread is going to unwind.
Oh yeah. Mary Lou, again, I cannot say this enough. This has been amazing. I've loved every minute of this, and you filled in so many gaps that I had in
Well, I'm
questions I
glad,
had
but see, I
about
don't,
stuff.
I don't think of it that way because it's just, you don't realize.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
I'm glad. I'm really glad. Yeah. And anyway, we'll stay in touch.
Oh,
And,
I'd love to. Yes, because yeah, this, like I said, you have no idea. I've been reading your writing for so long. I had no idea who was even writing it.
well,
You
we
know,
never, we never, we never had a masthead or anything. Yeah.
no. And then it was suddenly, the podcast dropped the other interview, and I was just like, wait a second. And then pieces started falling into place, and I had so many questions, and this is
Well, I
answered them.
mean, what happened with Frank was that he was actually a subscriber, and
Oh,
I
really?
didn't know who he was or anything like that because he was just another name. And then he contacted me. Oh, it's a couple of years ago, and he just took a chance and just like, "Are you Mary Lou?" Because you can Google me and find me there. And I said, "Yep." And so he wanted to do this, podcast thing, and I was, "Yeah, fine, whatever." And then when my sister passed and I was at her place going through stuff, I found the second bound set of, of VGU. And so I rang him and I said, you know, I can't take this stuff back to, Australia. I mean, there's no one else left in the family. There's no one to give it to. And he then actually proposed that they take the rights to. And I thought, you know, I've got bills here with all of what's going on, and what better place,
Yeah.
because otherwise, when I go, it goes nowhere. So yeah, that's so I mean, from LA, I sent him the other because there were two bound sets, and we had given him a bound set a few years ago because he reached out and asked if we had anything, and because we had two, I said, yeah, let's send him one, because it sounds it'll go to a good place. And when I unearthed these in a box, I got in touch with him right away, and I said, I thought of you because I don't want to throw them away, but I wasn't looking to transport all this stuff back here to just go back in a box in the garage. Didn't make sense. So anyway, uh, and I mean, unfortunately, Celeste never heard the finished podcast, but I mean, I talked to her afterwards and what have you, and I was telling her how we were in Wikipedia, when she was just thrilled. I mean, she said, I had no idea. I said, well, I didn't either. We just, we didn't realize we were making an impact. We really didn't. So that sort of makes it that much better. It's like all the sleepless nights. It's like, okay, there was a purpose.
You made a quality product, and that will always find its audience at some point.
Yeah, I mean, because everything does have an audience. It's just a question of finding it. And so I was really grateful uh, when Frank, made that offer and what have you, because I thought, you know what, it's going to go to a good place that's going to look after it and going to do the right thing with it. And what more could I ask for? You know.
Exactly.
So anyway, I will let you go. All
Thanks
right,
very
you
much.
take care.
Same
All right.
here. Bye.
Take care. Bye.
Bye. I hope you've enjoyed another Video Game Newsroom Time Machine interview. You can leave us comments on Twitter, Instagram, and if you like what we're doing here, drop us a couple of bucks on Patreon. All the links are in the description below.